In a dusty little town where the horizon seemed to end in a blazing orange sunset, there sat a decrepit building that once housed laughter but now only echoed silence. The peeling paint and shattered windows whispered stories of what used to be. This was the town school, a school with no books, no supplies, and no hope. But one morning, a stranger's car rattled down the gravel road, stirring up clouds of dust in its wake. The engine sputtered and whined, finally groaning to a halt outside the school. The door creaked open and out stepped a young woman. Her sneakers scuffed against the gravel as she approached the building, a faint smile dancing on her lips. She looked determined, almost radiant in the harsh morning light. This was Ava, and she had arrived with a mission. While the sun climbed higher, painting the town in golden hues, Ava took a deep breath and walked inside. The air was stale, thick with the weight of forgotten dreams. Rows of empty wooden desks sat waiting, as if anticipating the return of eager hands eager to learn. Ava felt a pulse of warmth in that cold, empty space. She had no idea what lay ahead, but she could feel it, the stirring of something extraordinary. Outside, the town buzzed with routine. Farmers rose early to tend to their crops. Children played tag in front yards, laughter echoing against the muted backdrop of life. No one bothered to look at the school. It had become an ignored relic, a place consigned to memory, until Ava walked through those doors. As she began her work, Ava discovered piles of dusty chalk, brittle paper, and faded maps tucked away in corners. They were remnants of a time when education flowed like a river, full and alive. And yet, despite the chaos, she saw potential. Instead of feeling defeated, her heart raced with possibility. She envisioned a place where laughter filled the halls once more, where children would run in, books in hand, their minds hungry for knowledge. But how could she inspire a town that had forgotten the importance of learning? How could she bring the community into this abandoned building to help fill it with life again? As she pondered these questions, Ava realized she couldn't do it alone. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she strolled through Main Street, her heart thumping in rhythm with each step. People stared, some whispered, others frowned. They murmured, but she merely smiled and waved, her hope as unyielding as the setting sun. She found herself outside a small diner, its neon sign buzzing like a firefly in the soft twilight. Inside, the aroma of frying eggs and coffee wafted through the air. The chatter of locals filled the space as they huddled over greasy plates. Ava took a seat at the counter, her presence like a ripple through still water. The waitress, an older woman with worn hands and weary eyes, approached her. She asked, eyeing Ava with curiosity. "A cup of coffee, please." Ava's voice wavered, but her gaze was steady. The waitress tilted her head, intrigued but skeptical. Ava took a deep breath, launched into her vision, and watched as doubt transformed into intrigue. As she spoke, the diner grew quiet, drawn into her story like moths to a flame. How a school could live again, how children could dream and learn, and how she needed help. Little by little, people leaned in. A farmer in a plaid shirt added that he could bring supplies. A mother of 3 said she could donate old teaching materials. Each voice built upon the last. Suddenly, the diner was buzzing with enthusiasm, laughter exploding into the air, carrying with it the scent of blooming potential. Days turned into weeks. Word spread like wildfire through town, igniting the spirits of the citizens. They gathered almost every evening after work. Carpenters crafted shelves. Tailors stitched simple clothes for the children. Families donated books they no longer read. The stranger who had come with nothing was now at the center of something beautiful. On a crisp Saturday morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, the entire town gathered at the school. The air thrummed with energy. Children's laughter filled the courtyard, echoing against the walls. Teachers who had long ago left their posts returned, drawn back by the collective spirit ignited by Ava. Ava stood at the entrance, her heart racing. Before her stretched a canvas of joy, anxiety, and hope intertwined. Her voice rang through the crowd like a bell. The townspeople turned toward her, ready to support and create something new. With one powerful swing of a metaphorical brush, they transformed the inside of the building. Paint flew, enthusiasm surged, and the echo of laughter filled corners that had long felt forgotten. The smell of fresh paper and bright paint swirled in the air. A week later, when the sun cast shimmering rays upon the town, the doors of the school finally opened wide, welcoming children. Ava felt a rush of emotion as she watched a new generation fill those once empty desks. The air buzzed with curiosity and energy. The school wasn't defined by walls or books. It was defined by the love and determination of a community coming together. But life has a way of throwing challenges in our path. Just days into the school year, thunderclouds gathered, not just in the sky but in the hearts of the townspeople. Rumors began to swirl that the funding for the school was being cut, that the town's leaders wanted to tear down the building and sell the land. The familiar hum of hope was suddenly overshadowed by doubt. Ava felt as though her dreams were crumbling right before her eyes. She saw the fear in children's eyes, the uncertainty among parents. Would all this work, all this love be swept away? But instead of retreating in defeat, Ava knew they had to fight. One evening, Ava stood before a crowded town hall, the flickering fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows on anxious faces. She could feel the weight of their expectations, their worries. "This school matters," she said, her voice unwavering against the tension. "It's more than a building. It's a sanctuary of hope and possibility for our children." As she spoke, glimpses of support emerged like sparks igniting into flame. Community members chimed in, sharing their stories of how the school had brought their families together. A school that accepted every child, built connections, offered dreams. Their voices rose in passionate unity, drowning out the fears that had threatened to tear them apart. People began forming committees, rallying together to save their school. Each member took on different tasks, potential donations, organizing events, and reaching out to local news stations. The story of a town coming together for its school was compelling. Soon enough, news cameras were rolling, bright lights focused on their mission. The story began to spread beyond the dusty streets. A surge of kindness radiated through the townsfolk as they held bake sales, garage sales, and fundraising events. Children painted signs, their laughter punctuating the seriousness of the moment. Together, they filled the air with energy and determination, resonating within their shared dream of keeping the school alive. As days turned into weeks, the once fragile sense of fear began to transform into something more potent, a fierce resolve. Ava stood proud as she watched the community spirit grow stronger. The school had become a rallying point, a symbol of hope igniting passion in hearts once dimmed by complacency. Finally, after months of relentless effort, the day came when the town would vote. The air was electric as folks filed into the town hall, anticipation buzzing like an electric current. Ava stood at the back, surrounded by children who wore their hearts proudly on their sleeves. They held hands, squeezing them tighter as the votes were cast. When the results were announced, a stunned silence filled the room. Then, like fireworks igniting a night sky, a collective cheer erupted. They saved their school. Tears flowed freely as Ava embraced the kids, the town, the dreams that had ignited like wildfire. The challenge had been fierce, but they had fought back with courage and love. The school would remain standing, a proud testament to the power of a community willing to invest in its future. The school began to flourish as a hub of creativity, learning, and community engagement. Weekends brought families together for movie nights, art classes, and community dinners. Children ran through the halls with laughter, their enthusiasm infectious. Ava had discovered something profound, the power each of them had to ignite change, to reclaim what once felt lost. They fought together, not only for their children, but for the roots that had tied them all to one another. And as the sun set each day, casting a warm glow over the town, Ava would stand outside that little school, soaked in love and laughter blooming within. She never could have imagined how a chance encounter, a dusty building, and the spark of a single idea could bring a whole town back to life. The sound of a distant bell rang through the small town of Willow Creek, but it wasn't the kind of bell that signaled joy or celebration. It was a bell of resignation, a toll for a place that had once been full of life, but was now withering under the weight of neglect. Children darted past the old, decrepit schoolhouse, their laughter fading quickly as they left the building behind, as if it was a ghost from the past. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the scent of mothballs clung to the yellowed walls. Desks sat scattered, their surfaces scratched and scarred, long deprived of eager hands and fresh ideas. There were no books, no supplies, just empty rooms filled with the echoes of forgotten dreams. This was a school meant to inspire, to educate, but it had become a relic, a shell of what it once was. One chilly afternoon, as the winter sun began to dip behind the horizon, a figure approached. A man in his 30s, dressed in a worn flannel and jeans, walked slowly toward the school. His name was Tom. He hailed from a neighboring town, where opportunity had shown itself but disappointment had followed closely behind. Tom had always believed in the transformative power of education, but life had dealt him setbacks. But today was different. Today, he carried within him an unshakable resolve, a glimmer of hope that had been growing stronger with each step. Walking through the cracked doors of the school, Tom was greeted by a silence so profound it felt alive. He felt as if he were entering a forgotten world. And yet, amidst the neglect, a spark ignited within him. Tom had always been a dreamer, often daydreaming about ways to change the world. But dreams alone don't build schools. They don't turn empty rooms into places of learning. They require action, willingness to confront despair, and perhaps a little bit of courage. The first thing Tom did was look around. He noted old chairs stacked haphazardly in the corner, the thick layers of dust settling on everything. He couldn't just walk away. Something deep inside him refused to let that happen. He recalled his childhood, filled with teachers who had inspired him, who had opened his eyes to new possibilities. He thought about the children in this town, their potential stifled by a lack of resources and an overwhelming sense of defeat. With each passing day, Tom returned to the school, carrying a broom and a dustpan. He started small, sweeping away the debris of neglect, cleaning the surfaces where hope once flourished. Day by day, he transformed the dust-laden desks into places of promise. As the days turned into weeks, whispers began to spread through Willow Creek. "Have you seen that man?" People were curious but skeptical. Some even laughed. With each chuckle, Tom felt the weight of doubt pressing against him, but he pushed it aside. It was during one of these afternoons that he met Lily. She was a young teacher, a recent graduate struggling to find a place in a world where positions were scarce. Lily had heard about the man who swept and scrubbed and decided to see it for herself. She thought he was a fool, but as she approached, she saw the determination in his eyes as hard as stone, the resolve etched onto his brow. She asked, trying to sound tough but unable to hide her curiosity. "I'm bringing this school back to life," he replied, a hint of excitement flickering in his voice. She scanned the hollow halls, the drab walls weighed down by the weight of the past. "No," he shook his head, the seriousness of his words breaking her skepticism. "This school can be a beacon for kids in this town." In that moment, something shifted in Lily. She saw a fire lighting within Tom, and for a brief instant she found a spark of her own flickering back to life. She asked softly, "With everything I have," he replied, and that sincerity was hard to ignore. The two forged an alliance grounded in a shared vision. They became each other's shadows in the dusty halls, planning, brainstorming, and working tirelessly to devise a way to resurrect not just a school, but a community. As they cleaned, organized, and figured out what they needed, books, supplies, and resources, the challenges mounted. Alongside the physical toil, there was the constant battle against apathy, but there was also a burgeoning support network forming around them. Tom and Lily reached out to parents, local businesses, and townsfolk, almost like a rallying cry. They hosted small community meetings at the local diner, often drawing laughter and skepticism. But slowly, they also garnered support. The more they spoke about the dreams they had for the children, the more people began to listen. One evening, after a long day, Tom sat on the school steps, exhaustion seeping into his bones. He looked toward the setting sun, a canvas bleeding oranges and purples, and pondered whether they could really bring this place back. Would all their work matter? He felt Lily settle beside him, her presence warm and reassuring. "We're making a difference, Tom," she said quietly, her gaze focused on the horizon. He laughed softly, though doubt still danced in the corners of his heart. "We're just cleaning up a building. But it's more than that," she countered, her eyes shining. "It's the symbol we need. The next day, they decided to hold an event at the site of the school. The plan was simple: invite everyone in Willow Creek to help clean, donate supplies, and share their visions for the future of education in the town. Tom and Lily plastered handmade flyers all over town, their enthusiasm infectious. They declared, capturing the essence of possibility. The day arrived and the sun shone brightly, almost as if it approved of their mission. As people trickled in, hesitance turned to participation. Families brought brooms, fresh paint, and donations of books. They scrubbed away grime as laughter rang through the air. Children began to sneak in, curious eyes wide, their excitement palpable at the sight of adults working together. But amidst their triumphs, doubt still lingered. Would this be enough? Could they really build something sustainable? In the midst of painting a classroom, Tom paused, glancing at a group of children surrounding him. They were more than hands helping. They were the very life of this place. The months turned into a blur of activity. Weekends filled with community events turned into a foundation for learning. Word spread like wildfire, and soon, the empty hallways were filled with chatter and voices, a chorus harmonizing with hope and resilience. But their struggles were far from over. At one such gathering, an unexpected visitor arrived, an intimidating figure in a suit and tie, a shadow rising against the joyful atmosphere. His presence hushed the crowd, eyes widening at the sharp contrast. This was Mr. Thompson, the district supervisor, a man known for being unforgiving. "Tom, Lily," he began, his voice dripping with authority. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I'm afraid what you're doing could be a waste of time. The town doesn't have the budget to support a school." The collective gasp echoed piercingly through the charged atmosphere. Tom felt the flames of fear stoke in his belly, but amidst that fear he found courage and stood taller, facing Mr. Thompson directly. "This school is more than just a building," Tom said, his voice steady. "It's a lifeline for these kids." "You're dreaming," Thompson sneered. "We're not just dreaming," Lily interjected, stepping in beside Tom. "We're doing this. We're showing our kids that education matters." The room buzzed with energy, anger rising as people began voicing their sentiments, rallying around Tom and Lily. Mr. Thompson stood, unbending and frustrated, but the momentum had shifted. Together, they spoke with a fierce determination born from hope. With a splash of vibrant colors and the groundwork of a curious spirit, Tom and Lily's dream began to reshape lives. They coordinated tutoring programs, held art classes, and created spaces where families could gather, learning together. The school transformed into a sanctuary of enlightenment, a heartbeat in a town that had felt silent for too long. Days of struggle, conflict, and passionate determination culminated in one glorious moment, the final reveal of the school's revitalization. The community gathered, hands clasped, smiles illuminated their faces as they entered through the bright red doors. Everywhere they looked, joy reigned. Walls were draped with artwork, each classroom held stacks of donated books. Children cheered, running through hallways that were once lifeless. Tom felt gratitude wash over him like a wave as he stood before the crowd. "This school is not just ours, it belongs to all of you," he proclaimed, his voice echoing through the hall. Cheers erupted as he gestured towards the children. They grinned from ear to ear, bursting with unbridled enthusiasm. Their innocence, their belief in a brighter tomorrow, transformed this school into a symbol of hope, a testament to what dedication and passion could achieve. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the town, Tom understood they had not just revitalized an old building. They had sparked a movement, a belief that when a community unites for a common purpose, the extraordinary could happen. In that moment, as he faced the beaming faces of his neighbors, he knew that dreams can come alive, thriving amidst laughter, love, and unwavering determination. And just like that, Willow Creek became a place filled with possibility once more. In the heart of a dusty little town called Maple Grove, a weathered building stood abandoned, its paint peeling like old memories. The sign above the door read Maple Grove Elementary, but to anyone passing by, it was nothing more than a graveyard of forgotten dreams. The laughter of children once rang like music in those halls, but now the only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind. One crisp autumn afternoon, a young man named Noah parked his truck outside the school. He had been passing through when something about the rundown building caught his eye, pulling at his curiosity. Little did he know, this building would change his life forever. Noah was a wanderer by nature, an adventure seeker who had bounced from city to city, but today felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, and a voice deep inside urged him to explore. He stepped out, the crunch of gravel underfoot echoing into the silence. As he approached the entrance, the sun cast a warm glow, creating an inviting ambience in an otherwise desolate place. Pushing open the creaky door, Noah was hit by the smell of dust and age. The hallways were dimly lit, the sunlight trickling in through cracks in the boarded windows. Dust motes danced in the air, swirling around him like tiny spirits urging him to take action. The classrooms were empty, the desks in disarray, and the blackboards covered in years of chalk dust. But what struck him most was the total lack of any school supplies. No books, no maps, not even a single pencil. It felt like a ghost town, devoid of the life that is so vital to learning. It was then he spotted her, a teacher, almost a mirage in the sunlight, sitting at a desk stacked high with old papers. Her name was Emily, and she was in her 30s with bright eyes that carried the weight of 1,000 hopes. She asked, a hint of surprise mixing with warmth. "No, I think I'm right where I need to be," he replied, a smile creeping onto his face despite the heaviness in the air. Emily let out a gentle laugh, but it quickly extinguished. "I'm afraid there's not much to find here." Curiosity sparkled in Noah's eyes. "I'm trying to teach," she said softly, her eyes casting downward. Noah felt a pang in his chest. Teaching without tools sounded impossible. He could see the passion in Emily's gaze, a flicker of determination fighting to stay alive. The desire to make a difference was etched in every line on her face. Over the next few days, Noah found himself returning to the school. Each visit drew him deeper into Emily's world. They spent hours together, brainstorming ideas about how to breathe life back into the desolate building. Emily's lessons were filled with creativity, and Noah admired her ability to turn a dull lesson into something magical, even with the absence of physical resources. One afternoon, as they cleaned the dusty halls together, Emily shared her story. This town was once alive, vibrant, but over the years, families left, schools closed, and this place became a shadow of its former self. "I'm trying to hold on to give these kids somewhere to learn and grow." Noah listened, captivated by her resilience. He felt something igniting inside him, a flame he hadn't embraced in years. He suggested, enthusiasm bubbling. Emily raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over her face. "I have to believe they will," Noah replied, his voice solid. "This place belongs to them too." And so they began. Noah and Emily crafted flyers, filled with passion and hope, announcing a community meeting at the school. They posted them everywhere, in local cafes, on community boards, even at the farmer's market. Days passed, and anticipation filled the air. Everyone was talking about the meeting. Word spread like wildfire, igniting curiosity among the townspeople. When the day finally arrived, Noah and Emily stood by the entrance, heartbeats pounding in rhythm with their dreams. A light drizzle began to fall, creating a tense atmosphere as hesitant faces filed in. Adults shuffled their feet, glancing around, cautious and unsure. But when Noah cleared his throat and stepped forward, something shifted. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice echoing through the dusty hall. "We're not here to ask for money or resources." With every word, Noah painted a vivid picture of what could be. A school filled with books, a community thriving alongside it, laughter echoing through the halls once again. Emily stood beside him, interjecting with her unwavering passion, sharing her vision and dreams for the future. As the presentation unfolded, something remarkable happened. Eyes started to light up. Whispers of encouragement began to fill the room. One by one, people began to speak up, sharing memories of their own school days, recalling the importance of education. A local farmer proposed, suggested a mother of 3. One idea led to another, and soon the room pulsed with energy, excitement igniting like a wildfire. Noah and Emily looked at each other, disbelief washing over their faces. They weren't just dreaming anymore. They were witnessing something real. And so began the transformation. Volunteer days were organized where townsfolk came together, cleaning out the old schoolhouse, painting walls of vibrant blue, and creating a welcoming environment. Families donated items they no longer needed: books, supplies, art materials. A local baker even offered to provide snacks to keep the energy up. The school quickly blossomed into a hub of activity. Walls adorned with colorful artworks created by the children, a makeshift library stacked with donation books, and laughter spilling from classrooms filled with eager minds. They weren't just fixing a building. They were rebuilding a sense of community, a sense of belonging. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but as every story has its twists, theirs took a turn. The news hit like a brick wall. In that moment, Noah felt the weight of despair settle over him. How could they have come this far only to face such an abrupt end? People in the community began to murmur doubts, fear creeping back into their hearts. Yet, amidst the darkness, a fire ignited once more within Noah. This wasn't just about a building. It was about the very future of those children. "We can't let them down," he said fiercely to Emily, resolve etching itself into his voice. She nodded, her spark of determination reigniting. Determined, they organized a Save Our School rally. It was a call to arms aimed at the entire community. Everyone was invited: neighbors, families, children. The joyous exuberance of the children filled the air, their laughter echoing through the town, captivating hearts. As the rally unfolded, they assembled in front of the school. People gathered, filling the space with cheers of encouragement. Noah and Emily spoke passionately, rallying everyone to unite against the school board's decision. They shared stories of how this school had transformed their lives and how it was shaping the future of the town. But anxiety loomed in the air like storm clouds. Just as they began to feel momentum, the school board chair appeared, arms crossed and eyebrows furrowed. "You can't sustain this," he warned. Noah stepped forward, his chest out, ready to confront the naysayer. "But we are not just a system. We are a community. We are a family, and families fight for each other." Through it all, something magical began to happen. Local media caught wind of the rally and news cameras rolled in. The story of a small town coming together for education spread like wildfire across social platforms. Soon, phone calls poured in from outside the community, offers for support, donations, and encouragement. Days turned into weeks, and just when things seemed bleakest, the school board announced a special meeting to address the community's outpouring of support. Hope fluttered in their chests like butterflies as they gathered once again, hearts pounding with tense anticipation. The hall was packed. Neighbors clustered together, holding hands, exchanging glances that spoke louder than words. Noah and Emily presented their case, recounting their journey together, the hope they had ignited in the community. As they finished, the room hung in silence, and then a miracle unfolded. One board member stood up, eyes glistening. "I was once a student here," he said, voice thick with nostalgia. "This school is more than just bricks and mortar. It's about our kids and their future." One by one, others joined in. The tide shifted as more board members began to share their personal stories of growth, of community, of how the school had shaped their lives as well. It was a moment of unification, of recognition that education is not a privilege, it's a right. Cheers erupted in the room, hope pulsating in waves as the board voted unanimously to support the school, not just for now, but for generations to come. Tears flowed freely as Noah stood surrounded by friends, supporters, and perhaps most importantly, the children who had inspired their journey. They had done it. They had turned the tide and fought for something bigger than themselves. Tom and Emily's dream had become a reality, a living, breathing testament to the strength of community spirit. With renewed hope, they transformed the school into a vibrant learning hub, a sanctuary for children eager to learn, grow, and play. Noah looked around at the laughter and joy in every corner. The school had once been a hollow shell, but now it thrived with life, opportunity, and promise, a beacon shining brightly into the future. In that moment, surrounded by love and triumph, Noah realized that it wasn't just about saving a school. It was about igniting a movement, a belief that together they could carve out a space where dreams were nurtured and futures were bright. and as the sun set over Maple Grove, it illuminated a path paved with resilience, love, and an unwavering belief in tomorrow. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dusty streets of Gordon Grove. The town had seen better days. Once alive with laughter and chatter, it was now a place where hope seemed to fade like the old paint on its buildings. A worn-out "Welcome to Gordon Grove" sign rested at the edge of town, creaking slightly in the wind, while the echoes of school bells long forgotten faded into history. One fateful day, a young man named Liam found himself here, drawn by a sense of purpose he couldn't quite explain. He'd heard rumors of an abandoned schoolhouse at the edge of town, a place where learning had been left to decay. As he stepped onto the school's grounds, an uneasy feeling settled in his stomach, a voice whispering that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Pushing open the creaky door, he was met by a scene that felt suspended in time. Dust hung in the air, catching the light that streamed through broken windows. Desks stood in haphazard rows, their surfaces covered in a thick layer of grime. In that moment, he felt a deep sorrow for the lost dreams that once filled this space. Then he saw her, a woman in her 30s, sitting at a desk piled high with old papers and broken crayons. Her name was Sarah, and she was trying to teach children in a school with no books. In hopeful letters, but there were no students, just faded memories of laughter, now replaced by the silence of neglect. "Hi there," Liam said, his voice breaking the stillness. Sarah looked up, surprise washing over her face. "I guess you could say I'm looking for purpose," he replied honestly, his eyes scanning the barren classroom. "It's complicated," Sarah said, her voice heavy with emotion. "I'm trying to hold on to this place, but without resources or support, it feels impossible." His heart ached for her and the children she yearned to teach. Sarah's eyes lit up for a moment before the flicker of hope quickly dimmed. Help from who? But Liam was determined. He couldn't let that spark of potential flicker out. He had always believed in the power of education, had seen it change lives in small yet profound ways. And as he looked around the empty classroom, an idea brewed in his mind, a plan that could breathe life back into this forgotten place. "Let's bring the community together," he suggested. "We can hold meetings, share your vision, and ask for support." Sarah hesitated but could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I have to believe they will," Liam replied, his tone firm. "This is their town, their children." And so, with a flicker of hope igniting between them, they set out to create a plan. They designed posters to invite everyone to a community meeting at the school. It was a humble request, but it carried the weight of change. Days turned into weeks as they prepared, hard work consuming their every waking moment. Liam and Sarah cleaned the cobwebs from the corners, painted the walls a bright yellow, and turned the dusty classrooms into welcoming spaces filled with possibilities. Each stroke of paint was a whisper of hope, urging the community to join them. As the meeting day approached, they began to hear murmurs of skepticism from the townsfolk. Some said, but amidst the doubt, there were patches of curiosity, sparks of interest lighting up the faces of a few brave souls. When the evening arrived, the air was electric with anticipation. Sarah stood at the front of the school, her heart pounding. Liam stood beside her, a pillar of support. As the first few faces showed up, curious, yet cautious, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice wavering but filled with determination. Liam leaned into her words, sharing stories of what education could foster: curiosity, creativity, and community. He spoke about their shared vision, a place where learning and laughter could thrive together like flowers blooming in spring. Slowly, more faces turned toward them. People began to nod, and murmurs of agreement floated through the crowd. Someone spoke up. "I remember this school as a child." For the first time in years, hope began to spread like wildfire. Ideas bounced off the walls, each suggestion digging deeper into the hearts of the townsfolk. One woman proposed, suggested a local baker, her spirit brightening alongside her enthusiasm. The meeting transformed into a spark of collective determination. One voice at a time, they rallied around Sarah and Liam. Together, they drew up plans for revival: a fundraiser, a community cleanup day, an art show featuring local talent. Each idea built upon the last, creating a vision that truly felt within reach. But as any story goes, the road to change is rarely smooth. Just as they began to feel momentum, reality interjected. A week later, as they prepared for the upcoming community fundraiser, a daunting letter arrived. It came from the school board, a warning of impending closure if enrollment didn't increase significantly. Panic rippled through Sarah's veins. She whispered, her voice trembling. The weight of despair threatened to crush her resolve. Liam's eyes sparkled with determination. With renewed fire, they organized another community meeting, this one urgent, filled with cries for action. If we don't stand together, we will lose more than just a building. Liam declared, his voice echoing across the room. Emboldened by purpose, residents stood up, capturing moments of passion in their voices. "What if we brought our kids to school?" said one father. Lines were drawn around the importance of education, community spirit igniting as families drew closer. They brainstormed actions, organizing workshops and bringing back beloved traditions that had faded alongside the school's hopes. And as ideas flowed, so did the energy to keep fighting for a place that belonged to the heart of their town. The days passed quickly, filled with busyness and enthusiasm. Word spread about the upcoming art show fundraiser. Artists offered their work for the cause, and the community poured its love and effort into each detail. As banners hung proudly and the sounds of laughter echoed through the halls, anticipation built for the night ahead. Finally, the evening arrived. A crisp breeze coursed through the air, brushing against the excited faces gathering outside the school. It was a small-scale celebration, but it was filled with tangible hope and joy. Lights strung from the rafters cast a warm glow, illuminating the way for families to gather and connect. Inside, colors burst forth from the walls, adorned with student artwork and local crafts. Lively music played in the background, while laughter and chatter filled the air, a symphony of community hope. Liam and Sarah moved through the crowd, their hearts swelling with joy. Children ran bouncing from one piece of art to the next, proudly pointing out what they made. Parents engaged in conversations, rekindling connections that had long since faded. Just as they were lost in the atmosphere, the door creaked open. In walked a figure from the school board chair, a man known for his critical views. The crowd hushed, tension buzzing in the air. Liam's heart raced. But instead of dismissing them, the board chair walked up to the center of the gallery. Silence enveloped the room as all eyes turned toward him. "I came here to understand what all the excitement was about," he said, his voice steady yet curious. For a moment, the world shifted. Liam glanced at Sarah, who nodded subtly, urging him to speak. "We're revitalizing the school. This is our effort to show what it can be, a place full of promise." The board chair listened carefully as parents chimed in, sharing their hopes and dreams for the school. Each word painted a picture of renewed purpose, of a vibrant community they were trying to build. And as the night unfolded, something shifted in the air. The board chair finally spoke again. "I didn't realize this school meant so much to so many." It was in those moments that the sense of community proved more potent than he could have imagined. The board chair began to see the value beyond bricks and mortar, recognizing that this wasn't just a building, it was the heart of their town, and it had the power to shape futures. As the art show wrapped up, they announced the total funds raised. Cheers erupted, more significant than expected. People flooded with excitement, hope pouring over them as they realized they had the power to shape their future. And for the board chair, the final revelation sank in. He knew they could create the drive for support and funding that could change everything. In the weeks that followed, the community rallied together, unsure but determined. They visited local businesses, reaching beyond their comfort zones, explaining their vision. Slowly, the town embraced the project, pledging funds, and local shops offered sponsorship. Days turned into months, and gradually the school breathed again. New printers arrived, books lined the shelves, and bright banners fluttered in the hallways. Classes resumed, and children returned to the laughter they had once left behind. As the final touches were made, an opening celebration was planned. Invitations flew out to the entire town, everyone eager to see the transformation. On that day, as families gathered under the bright sunshine, Liam stood alongside Sarah, their hearts full of gratitude. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes as they watched children play and learn around them. Liam nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. They will always have this place. As the sun set on Gordon Grove, casting golden light across the transformed school, laughter filled the air. Children sprinted through the halls, books clasped tightly in their hands, a tangible embodiment of the dreams they shared. In that moment, the town was no longer defined by its past. It was a place of renewal, of hope, a vibrant community that had come together and created something beautiful. A powerful reminder that even when darkness looms, even when hope feels distant, the strength of unity can always reignite the light. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a poignant reminder of the difference a single individual could make when fueled by passion, purpose, and community. In the heart of Hartsville, a small town nestled between the hills, a dilapidated schoolhouse stood defiantly against time. It was no ordinary school. It whispered stories of laughter and learning, memories now buried beneath layers of dust and neglect. The paint was peeling, the windows cracked, and a sign that read Hartsville Elementary swung lazily in the breeze, as if struggling to remember the joy once found within. One blustery afternoon, a man named Ethan drove into town, drawn by an unfathomable pull. He was a teacher by heart but had been wandering, searching for something he couldn't quite name. When he spotted the school, his heart raced. As he stepped out of his car, the bite of the wind wrapped around him like a long-lost friend. There was an electric buzz in the air, and he felt a spark of possibility. Pushing through the creaky door, Ethan was greeted by an overwhelming silence. Dust motes floated lazily in the stream of light piercing through the broken windows. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the remnants of what had once been a place of learning. Rows of empty desks sat like sentinels, waiting for the return of the laughter and chaos that defined childhood. But there were no children-only ghosts of unfulfilled dreams floating in the air. Then he saw her Amanda, a young teacher in her early 30s. She sat at a cluttered desk, scribbling notes on loose pages. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her brow furrowed in concentration. She asked without looking up, her voice tinged with weariness. "I saw the school and I came to see it," Ethan replied, stepping closer. "But it seems—" Amanda looked up, surprised by his presence. "Quiet, that's one way to put it," she said with a hint of sarcasm, then her expression softened. "I've been trying to teach here without any books." Ethan's heart sank. "No books? There's an entire town out there and somehow they've forgotten this place," she said, her voice trailing off. Ethan felt a connection in that moment, a shared understanding of the importance of education. What if we brought the town together? Amanda's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "I have to believe they will," he affirmed, determination seeping into his veins. And so began an unexpected partnership. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Amanda rolled up their sleeves and set to work. They cleaned the classrooms, removing years of dust and neglect, transforming the space into a world vibrant with possibility. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan and Amanda realized they couldn't do it alone. They crafted flyers and spread word about a community meeting they planned to hold. They wanted to invite everyone in Hartsville to share the vision of a revived school, to rekindle the spark of learning that once thrived within those walls. The night of the meeting arrived, and the old school was filled with an energy that hadn't been felt in years. Parents, grandparents, and even older siblings filled the rickety chairs, their faces a mix of anticipation and skepticism. Ethan stood at the front, with Amanda beside him. The room fell quiet as he cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady. "We're here to talk about something important, the future of our children." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, recalling their own fond memories, while others cast doubtful glances. Amanda waved her hands to quiet the murmurs. "We need to open the doors of this school again," she urged. "Our children deserve better than what we've been offering." She shared her own struggles, how she started teaching with no resources, yet still managed to connect with her students. A few parents began to whisper among themselves, recalling their own educational experiences. Old connections surged to the surface, pushing aside doubt. Finally, an elderly woman stood up in the back. "I went to school here," she said, voice cracking with emotion. "It was a wonderful place full of memories." With her words, a dam broke. More people spoke up, sharing stories of generations who learned within those walls. The energy transformed from skepticism to support, and the room erupted with enthusiasm. Ethan and Amanda exchanged glances, wonder lighting their eyes. They could feel the tides turning. The community sprang into action. They organized fundraising events, bake sales, car washes, and local performances, all to gather resources for books, supplies, and renovations. The parents grew more involved, not just in funding but also in volunteering. Together, they scrubbed the floors, painted murals, and transformed the once lifeless school into a vibrant sanctuary of learning. As the weeks passed, they saw more and more children trickle back through the doors. Each day, the hallways echoed with laughter, the classrooms filled with chatter. They introduced art classes, music lessons, and even impromptu science experiments that made the children's eyes light up with wonder. With each passing moment, the spirit of education blossomed. Just as they felt as if they were on the cusp of something great, the shadows of doubt crept back in. A month into their efforts, the school board announced plans to allocate funding to another town, leaving Hartsville's school once again teetering on closure. Panic swept through the townsfolk. "We can't lose this again," Amanda said, her voice shaking. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll fight this together." They called another community meeting, determined to rally support once and for all. Families packed the gymnasium, their faces etched with worry. A sense of urgency hung in the air as parents shared concerns, reminding everyone what was at stake. Ethan took to the front once more, fueled by the fire igniting within him. "We have proven that we can build something beautiful together." A flicker of hope blossomed. That night, the townsfolk brainstormed every idea they could muster: petitions, letters to the board, and even a public demonstration. They drafted an impassioned letter, signing it in droves, pouring their hearts onto the pages. The words echoed the sentiments of a community unwilling to let go. On the day of the board meeting, the atmosphere was thick with anxiety. The streets were alive with passionate voices demanding the chance to keep their school open, a testament to their unity and resilience. As they marched, they arrived at the school board's meeting, and the room buzzed with anticipation. One by one, parents stood to speak, sharing stories of how the school impacted their lives, and the lives of their children and their hopes for the future. The emotional weight of their words painted a vivid picture of a community forever intertwined with the fabric of that school. Amidst impassioned pleas, Ethan stood up and spoke. "This school is not just a building, it's the heart of our town. It's where memories are made, friendships are born, and dreams take flight. We cannot let it die." The board members listened, each word resonating like a drumbeat in their hearts. A silence enveloped the room as they deliberated. Finally, a vote was cast, and the decision rested on the table. The tension was palpable as the board chair spoke. "We understand your passion and commitment, and we cannot ignore the overwhelming support from this community." Cheers erupted from the crowd, jubilation flooding the air as emotions ran high. Tears of relief streamed down faces, laughter echoed, and hugs were exchanged. They had won a battle not just for a building, but for the essence of their community. As weeks turned to months, the school continued to flourish. They expanded upon their initial plans, introducing new programs, including after-school activities and community nights where families could come together to learn, share, and grow. Ethan and Amanda found themselves standing side by side, watching the children run through the hallways, eyes alight with excitement. They held hands, unspoken gratitude passing between them. All the hard work, the sweat, tears, and late nights had culminated in this moment. One evening, as they prepared for an upcoming school event, a showcase of student projects, Ethan turned to Amanda, awe echoing in his voice. She smiled, a warm glow lighting her features. "This town is more than I ever imagined." On the night of the showcase, the school transformed into a tapestry of creativity. Proud parents gathered, marveling at the projects their children had worked so hard to create. Exhibits filled classrooms, and performances sparkled in the gymnasium. Laughter and joy wove through every corner, encapsulating what they had all fought for. Standing in the crowd, Ethan watched as Amanda led a group of children in a song they had prepared. Their voices blended beautifully, each note telling a story of resilience, hope, and newfound beginnings. The energy in the room was palpable, a reminder of how far they had come. As the final note echoed, the crowd erupted in applause, the claps punctuating the air with excitement and pride. At that moment, Ethan felt the weight of possibility enveloping him. Hartsville Elementary was alive, not just as a school, but as a beating heart of the community, a symbol of what could be achieved when people come together. As darkness fell outside, the school glowed with light, all the more radiant for the journey that had led them here. They had transformed a hollow shell into a thriving sanctuary of learning. In that small town, they found purpose and belonging, proving once and for all that community is a powerful force, one that has the ability to change lives, inspire dreams, and create futures where hope thrives eternally. In the small town of Crestwood, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over a forgotten schoolhouse. The windows were cracked, and weeds grew stubbornly through the cracks in the pavement. The sign at the front read Crestwood Academy, but it seemed more like an echo from the past than a place of learning today. The laughter of children, once vibrant and full of life, had been replaced by an eerie silence. But on this particular evening, a worn-out car rumbled down the gravel road leading to the school. Inside, a young man named Jake gripped the steering wheel, uncertainty gnawing at him. He had heard whispers in neighboring town stories of a teacher still trying to make a difference despite overwhelming odds. As he pulled into the lot, he felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. Pushing the door open, Jake glanced around the dilapidated grounds, and a gust of wind brought with it the scent of nostalgia. Setting his eyes on the old building, he couldn't help but feel a tug at his heartstrings. He walked hesitantly toward the entrance, curiosity pulling him deeper into this forgotten world. As he stepped through the door, the musty air wrapped around him like a shroud. Dust floated in the beams of light, illuminating abandoned desks and tattered posters. But then he spotted her, a young woman with a determined expression, sitting at a desk piled high with papers and broken supplies. Her name was Julia, and despite the dusty surroundings, she illuminated the room. She asked, looking up momentarily, her voice a mix of surprise and guarded hope. "I heard about this school and wanted to see it for myself," Jake replied, glancing around the empty classroom. "But it feels..." Julia's eyes clouded with a hint of sadness. "It's been tough. I'm trying to teach, but without books or resources, it's nearly impossible." Jake felt his heart ache for her, and a flicker of determination sparked. A skeptical smile played on Julia's lips. "And how do you propose we do that? This town has turned its back on this school." "I refuse to believe that," he insisted. Julia hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "I have to try," Jake replied. And just like that, a partnership formed. They spent countless hours together, cleaning the school, scrubbing desks, and painting walls. With every brushstroke, they rekindled hope not just for themselves, but for the community. Each day brought them closer, a shared purpose binding them together. As their vision took shape, they realized they needed the community's support. They crafted flyers, inviting everyone for a community revival meeting at the school. The days leading up to the meeting were filled with excitement and anxiety. How would the townspeople respond? When the night arrived, a nervous energy hummed in the air. Families trickled into the school, filling the once empty hallways with voices, but uncertainty lingered. Julia clenched her hands at her sides, feeling the weight of the moment. Jake stood before the crowd, clearing his throat to catch their attention. "Thank you all for coming." The whispers intensified. Unfamiliar faces filled the room, skeptically analyzing what they were about to hear. Julia stood beside Jake, her heart racing as he continued. "This school has the potential to be a beacon of hope," he said passionately, "but we need your help." The murmurs faded as he spoke, the seriousness of his words igniting something powerful. Julia could see the flickers of interest in the crowd. She stepped forward, her voice trembling yet full of conviction. "I know it's easy to feel defeated, but education matters." One by one, people began to share their hopes about the school. An elderly woman stood, reminiscing about her time as a student. "This school changed my life." There it was, hope gathering momentum. The crowd buzzed with enthusiasm, ideas exploding into the air. They jumped into action, brainstorming ways to support the school fundraising events, tutoring programs, and even a community cleanup day. The idea that had once seemed impossible now felt tangible. As the weeks went by, the energy in Crestwood shifted. Families came alive with purpose, their collective spirit growing stronger. Jake and Julia watched in awe as the town transformed, people piling donations of supplies and books, their love pouring into every corner of the school. Young teenagers offered to volunteer, eager to help in any way they could, their laughter reverberating through the halls. But challenges loomed on the horizon. Just as everything felt like it was falling into place, the school board announced that they would evaluate the school's performance in 2 weeks. If enrollment didn't increase substantially, Crestwood Academy would face closure. Panic set in. Julia's stomach twisted at the thought of losing everything they had fought for. She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We take action," Jake asserted, gaze steady. "We can't let fear dictate our future." With renewed determination, they organized a rally to demonstrate the town's commitment to education. Families created posters, children wrote heartfelt letters, and Jake and Julia worked tirelessly to ensure everyone knew the importance of attending. On the day of the rally, the energy in the air buzzed like electricity. As they marched from the school to the town hall, the community rallied behind them. A palpable sense of belonging and purpose surged through the crowd, each step echoing hope. When they arrived, the atmosphere shifted. The town hall was packed, and the air thick with anticipation. The school board sat at the front, arms crossed, expressions unreadable. Julia felt a knot of fear tighten in her chest, but Jake squeezed her hand, providing silent support. One by one, parents spoke, sharing their stories and dreams for their children. A mother stood, her voice trembling as she recalled her daughter's struggles in a school that had neglected her needs. "We are here today to show that we believe in our school." As each voice erupted with passion, Julia felt the doubt dissipate. This wasn't just about a building. This was about lives, futures, and the heart of their community. They were standing together, united in a cause that would shape generations. Finally, it was Jake's turn. He faced the board, his heart pounding. "We've shown that we can come together to revitalize this school. We've breathed life back into these walls." When the board members whispered to each other, Julia held her breath. Silence filled the room as they considered the pleas of the community. Finally, the board chair spoke, his voice firm but wavering. "We understand the passion that has been demonstrated here today." Cheers erupted throughout the hall, tears of joy rolling down faces as hope flooded the room. They had won a victory not just for the school but for the entire town. In the weeks that followed, Crestwood Academy blossomed. Classes filled with eager students who soaked up every lesson. Julia felt a change in the air, children excitedly discussing projects, their laughter echoing through the hallways. Parents volunteered, forming a tight-knit community, supporting one another in ways they had never imagined. Jake watched as Julia thrived in her element, empowered by her students and their families. They organized arts and crafts, field trips, and science fairs. Education was no longer a mere obligation. It was an adventure waiting to unfold. One evening, as they worked late in the school to set up for a large community event, Jake stopped and looked at Julia. He asked, disbelief flooding his voice. Julia smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I've never felt this alive." Then a thought occurred to her. What if we started a mentorship program? Young teens could help younger kids with homework. "You're brilliant," Jake exclaimed, excitement igniting once more. As the mentorship program launched, younger children flourished in the presence of their mentors. Confidence soared, friendships developed, and throughout Crestwood Academy, the powerful impact of education poured forth. Months turned into years. The once quiet halls echoed with energy and enthusiasm, a tapestry of learning braided into the very fabric of Crestwood. Jake and Julia had built not just a school, but a family, a network of support woven tightly together. One crisp fall day, as leaves fell like confetti from the trees, Jake and Julia stood outside the school, their laughter mixing with the wind. They watched children play, each one a testament to what they had fought for. "Look at them," Julia said softly. "Together," Jake added, pride swelling in his voice. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the world in brilliant hues, Jake understood the journey was just beginning. Crestwood Academy stood as a shining example of perseverance, where dreams blossomed and futures thrived. They had turned a forgotten place into a thriving hub of hope, a beacon that would guide generations to come. In that small town, they had not only saved a school but reignited a sense of community, proving that when hearts unite for a common cause, the impossible becomes reality. And with that, they stepped forward into the sunset, hands clasped, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, fueled by the love of learning and the promise of tomorrow. The wind howled through the empty streets of Old Maple, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves and forgotten dreams. The sun hid behind thick clouds, casting a dull light on a weathered schoolhouse that had once thrived with laughter and learning. The sign hanging above the door read Maple Grove School, but to anyone passing by, it looked like a relic, more ghost than educational institution. Inside, the air was thick with dust, heavy with the weight of neglect. Desks sat in disarray, their once bright surfaces now scratched and dulled. In one corner, torn books lay forgotten, their pages yellowing with age. The walls, once adorned with colorful posters, now bore only peeling paint. Hope seemed to have left this place long ago. But one fateful afternoon, a young man named Alex pulled into the gravel parking lot. He had heard whispered tales in nearby towns about a teacher who was bravely trying to educate children in this rundown school, despite the overwhelming odds. Curiosity drove him here, but as he stepped out of his car, the chilling air and ghostly silence made him hesitate. Pushing open the creaky door, Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. He was greeted by a haunting stillness. Every step echoed in the hollow hallways. As he turned the corner, he spotted her Emily, a devoted teacher in her late 20s, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers and a few outdated textbooks. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she painstakingly prepared a lesson. She asked, looking up with bright but weary eyes. "I came to see the school," he replied, his voice slightly unsteady. Emily hesitated, uncertainty flickering across her face. "There's not much to see." "But it's still standing," Alex insisted, glancing around the classroom. Emily raised an eyebrow, skepticism mixed with hope. "You think so? This town has forgotten about us. We haven't had proper resources in years." Alex felt something stir inside him. He had always believed in the power of education to change lives. What if we reached out to the community? What if we could remind them of what this school once meant? A flicker of hope ignited in Emily's eyes. "I have to believe they will," he replied, his voice unwavering. And just like that, a partnership formed. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Alex spent days rolling up their sleeves, cleaning the classrooms, and creating a warm, inviting space. They painted the walls bright colors, hung motivational quotes, and filled the empty desks with supplies they managed to collect. With every stroke of paint and every careful arrangement, they revitalized not only the physical space, but also their shared spirit. As excitement built, they crafted flyers announcing a community meeting, inviting everyone in Old Maple to come and see the changes. Days turned into anxious nights as they waited to see if anyone would show up. Would the townsfolk even care? The day of the meeting finally arrived. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden hue over the school. Alex stood at the front of the classroom, heart pounding, as families began to trickle in. Emily watched from the side, her hopes rising and falling with each new face. "Thank you for joining us," Alex began, his voice resonating with urgency. "This school has been a cornerstone of our community, but it's fading." Whispers rippled through the crowd, skepticism lingering in the air. Then, as if driven by an unseen force, a father stood up, his voice shaking but firm. "I went to school here." Another voice chimed in, an elderly woman with a warm smile. "This school was a second home to many of us." With each voice that joined in, the energy shifted. The crowd began to buzz with ideas, hopes igniting like sparks in a dark room. Someone suggested. Emily stepped forward, her heart racing with newfound confidence. We can create programs for kids, draw in families. Alex glanced at her, pride swelling in his chest. Together, they created a plan. They organized bake sales, garage sales, and even sponsored a talent show. The town began to rally around their efforts, slowly awakening from its long slumber. As the weeks passed, Emily and Alex threw themselves into their work. The school transformed into a hub of activity. Families poured in, bringing donations of books, art supplies, and furniture. Desks became organized, and a small library was born in one corner filled with gently used books. Children began to wander back through the doors, laughing and eager to learn. Subjects came alive as Emily implemented creative lessons, filled with art, music, and hands-on activities. It was more than just teaching. It was about nurturing a love for learning. Conversations thrummed with energy, excitement sparking in the air. But as they celebrated their small victories, a storm lurked in the distance. Just when everything seemed to be falling into place, the school board announced a critical meeting. If enrollment didn't increase significantly in the next month, they would close the school for good. Panic surged through Emily and Alex. They had worked so hard, but now it felt like everything was dangling by a thread. Emily exclaimed, her voice laced with desperation. "We fight," Alex replied, resolve firming in his heart. "We can't let this dream slip away." They called another community meeting, this time with an urgency that pulsed through the town like wildfire. Families rallied, their determination palpable in the air. Old Maple was alive with excitement, and they were ready to show everyone how much they cared about their school. On the day of the meeting, rain drizzled softly, but it didn't dampen spirits. Families filled the cramped gymnasium, their voices echoing off the walls. Alex stood at the front, flanked by Emily, both radiating passion and expectation. "Today we fight for the heart of our community," Alex began, his voice steady. "We need this school for our children." Emily stepped forward, her heart racing. "Every child deserves a place to learn and grow. You've seen what this school can be, but it takes all of us to make it happen." One by one, voices rose in support. Parents spoke, recounting their memories and hopes for their children. A young girl in a bright red dress stood up, her cheeks flushed. "I love coming here." With every voice that shared, the townsfolk's resolve crystallized. They brainstormed ways to boost enrollment and engage the community, concocting new programs to draw families back. Finally, a father with a determined look stepped forward. "Let's hold an open house, invite everyone to see what we're building here." The suggestion exploded into a flurry of enthusiasm. Committees formed on the spot, everyone diving into planning. A sense of unity filled the room, transforming fear into action. Weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity leading up to the open house. Posters decorating the town announced the date with vibrant colors and catchy slogans. Families came together, rallying around food drives, preparing presentations, and sharing what they had learned. When the day finally arrived, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the school. Laughter filled the air as families streamed through the doors, eyes wide with curiosity. The atmosphere was electric, offering a glimpse of hope that had long been dormant. As families toured the school, student artwork lined the walls, each piece a testament to creativity and resilience. Emily and Alex guided groups through the classrooms, beaming with pride as they witnessed the transformation. Each corner of the school felt alive, brimming with possibility. At the end of the day, as the final visitors trickled out, energy buzzed in the air. The school board members stood at the front, impressed by the turnout and the palpable enthusiasm. Their voices expressed cautious optimism, but the real victory belonged to the community. "Thank you for coming," said the board chair, visibly moved. "It's clear how much this school means to you." Cheers erupted, tears of joy streaming down faces as relief washed over the crowd. They had rallied together and fought for their future, proving that hope could triumph against adversity. As the weeks turned into months, Crestwood Academy continued to flourish. Classes grew fuller, and the sense of community deepened. Emily thrived, invigorated by her students' curiosity and creativity, while Alex watched from the sideline, feeling pride in the powerful impact they had made together. One sunny afternoon, as leaves rustled in the breeze, Emily looked at Alex and said, "We did it." He smiled, a sense of fulfillment swelling in his chest. "Together." As time went on, every day at Crestwood Academy unraveled new stories. Students participated in science fairs, where discoveries sparked excitement in their eyes. Art classes flourished, and encouragement flourished with every brush stroke. Families began to share not only their dreams for their children, but also for the town itself. The school became a hub for growth, a living reminder that dreams can come true. And as Emily and Alex stood hand in hand, watching the security and happiness on the faces of their students, they knew that education was not just about learning facts. It was about creating a community where every child felt seen, every dream validated. In the heart of Old Maple, amidst fallen leaves and laughter, they had built something extraordinary, a school that would nurture futures for generations to come. They had turned the story from one of despair into one of hope, a testament to perseverance, love, and the profound impact that one person can have in the life of a community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the school, it felt like a promise that together, they would continue to light the way for their children and the dreams they held dear. The sound of a single bell tolled softly, its echoes lingering in the air like whispers of a long-forgotten past. It was a dreary afternoon in the small town of Maplewood, with dark clouds hanging low in the sky threatening rain. As the shadows stretched across the cracked pavement, a solitary figure stepped into the hollowed halls of Maplewood Elementary, an old school that seemed to breathe a heavy sigh. Jake had heard the stories. This school was not merely forgotten, it had been abandoned in spirit. Some even called it a ghost town, where dreams of learning had dimmed to nothing more than fading memories. But today, it felt as if he was walking into the mouth of a dragon, dark and dangerous, but possibly alive with magic. Inside, the air was thick, laden with dust and the musty scent of neglect. Desks slumped in disarray, some cracked and worn while others lay bare, their surfaces untouched for years. It felt like a plea rather than an invitation. Then he saw her, a young woman named Lily, teaching to a small group of children seated on the floor, their eyes wide and eager. She was animated, her hands moving in grand gestures, as if trying to pull learning from thin air. Yet as Jake took a few steps closer, he realized there were no books, no materials, just a bright star doing her best in a universe that had conspired against her. Jake finally said, unable to contain his disbelief. Lily paused mid-sentence, a flicker of surprise in her eyes, quickly replaced by a smile that barely masked her fatigue. "Every moment with them matters," she said, glancing at the children who hung on her every word. Jake felt a surge of admiration mixed with concern. "But how can you teach without resources?" "They have what they need right here," she pointed to their hearts, then added, "but I also need the community's help." He proposed, excitement bubbling within him. Lily's eyes flickered with hope but quickly dimmed. "That would be amazing, but the town's forgotten us." With that spark of determination igniting in his chest, Jake nodded firmly. "Then let's remind them of what they're missing." For days and nights, Jake and Lily brainstormed ideas that could breathe life back into the school. They shared countless cups of coffee, paging through notebooks, searching for solutions buried beneath layers of dust and despondency. Finally, they settled on a plan: hold a community meeting, bring everyone back to the school, and remind them of the importance of education. Lily hesitated, worry etched on her face. "They will," Jake reassured her, his belief unwavering. "We have to believe." The flyers they created spread like wildfire across town, posters plastered on cafe walls, storefronts, and community bulletin boards. Jake felt a steady wave of hope crash over him as they put the last one up, but anxiety twisted in his gut. What if no one cared? On the evening of the meeting, a storm began to brew outside. Rain poured down in sheets, and thunder rumbled through the air. Jake felt his heart race as he set up chairs in the school's main hall, his mind flooded with doubt. He glanced at Lily, who was fidgeting with her hands, her eyes searching the empty space. "We could still call it a night," she offered, her voice tinged with disappointment. "Not yet," Jake urged, determination igniting again. As minutes ticked by, the room felt heavier with silence. Just as they started to lose hope, the door swung open and a family stepped inside, shaking off rain from their coats. More followed, and soon a small crowd began to form familiar faces, some shadows of their former selves, each drawn back to a place that held memories. Jake's pulse quickened. This was it. As they settled in, Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but warm. "We're here to talk about something important, our children's future." Concern danced in the eyes of parents, mistrust lingered in the air. A father finally spoke up, his voice tinged with skepticism. "How can we trust that this place can really change?" "Because of people like Lily," Jake replied passionately, gesturing to her. "She's working tirelessly to inspire these kids to build a community, but she can't do it alone." Lily stepped forward, her heart racing. "This school means so much to all of us." The crowd shifted, murmurs rose and fell like waves. Then one by one, voices emerged from the audience. A mother reminiscing about her time in the school, an elderly couple sharing how it had been the heart of their community. "We remember what this school meant to us," one woman said, tears in her eyes. With each new voice, hope began to swell. Their collective energy ignited something inside the room. They began brainstorming ideas, fundraisers, volunteer nights, and after-school programs. Jake could feel the tide turning, an energy so alive that even the storm outside quieted down, almost in reverence. Days turned into weeks and the community rallied together. They organized bake sales, car washes, and yard sales, funneling every dollar and every ounce of love back into the school. Gradually, the walls that had once felt oppressive transformed into bright, welcoming spaces. Emily dedicated herself to teaching again, her spirit reignited by the support around her. Families filled the parking lot, laughter mixing with the voices of kids running around. Tables were adorned with colorful banners and homemade goods, the scent of cookies wafting through the air. They created games, crafts, and story corners, overflowing with excitement and joy. But just as everything seemed to be on the brink of flourishing, unsettling news broke. The school board announced a surprise inspection. If they didn't see enough improvement in the school's enrollment and resources, they would close it for good. Panic swept through the community like a wildfire. Jake watched as fear crept back into the eyes of the townspeople. How could they have come so far only to face an abyss once more? Lily's voice trembled, worry etching her features. "We fight," Jake said, feeling the fire of determination blaze within him. "We've worked too hard to let this slip away." In the days leading up to the inspection, the atmosphere was electric with urgency. Volunteers rallied around them, working tirelessly to add finishing touches to classrooms, clean up the play areas, and organize resources in a way that screamed potential. The town, once resigned to despair, erupted with energy and inspiration. On the day of the inspection, they gathered in the school early, hope mingling with anxiety. Jake paced back and forth as they awaited the board members' arrival. Each heavy step echoed his doubts. When the board members finally arrived, their expressions were unreadable. They wore layers of authority, eyes scanning every corner of the school as they moved through the halls. But as they made their way into the classrooms, Jake's heart raced with both fear and excitement. Would they see the magic? Lily stood before a group of children, explaining math concepts using brightly colored blocks. Their eyes sparkled with understanding. The board members paused, taking in the scene that unfolded before them. Across the rooms, classrooms were filled with laughter and learning books nestled on makeshift shelves, art projects covering the walls, a sense of community flowing through every corner. Finally, the board chair cleared his throat, facing the gathered crowd. But just as hope began to blossom, he continued, "However, it will take more than enthusiasm to keep this school open. We are here to implement strict guidelines and standards." A gasp rippled through the audience. Lily clutched the edge of a table, fear flooding her. "No," she said, voice breaking. But the board chair continued. The storm of dread rolled in, overshadowing the bright atmosphere they had built. They had fought so hard only to find themselves at the edge of an insurmountable cliff. As the board members exited, whispers of defeat filled the air. Someone ventured quietly. Jake felt anger flare up. "No, we can't give in to fear." "There isn't enough time," Lily said, tears brimming in her eyes. She had given so much. It felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath her. Jake replied firmly, determination swelling once more. This school is more than just a building, it's a community. The townspeople rallied once again, the fire igniting in their hearts. They began organizing workshops to enhance their curriculum, sharing resources. Parents initiated tutoring programs, teens volunteered to mentor younger children, and the school came alive with passion and commitment. But just as hope began to shine, a storm brewed within. Lily felt the strain as she tried to keep up with the mounting pressure and expectations. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, leaving her weary and uncertain. In the following days, the school buzzed with activity, yet beneath the bustling surface lay tension that threatened to unravel all they had worked for. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging day, Lily confronted Jake. She blurted out, frustration spilling over. "We can," Jake insisted, his eyes locked on hers. "You're the heart of this school." But exhaustion flickered in her eyes. With a deep breath, Jake stepped closer, grounding himself in this moment. "You are more than enough. You inspired this change. If you believe it, the community will rally behind you." The fire ignited in her eyes once more. "Then let's do this." They worked through the night, filling out paperwork, gathering data from their projects, and setting goals for the students' achievements. As the week pressed on, the boundary between hope and despair felt thinner than ever. Then, the day of reckoning arrived. Townsfolk gathered in the school auditorium. They felt a swirling mix of emotions: fear, determination, and hope. The atmosphere thickened with the weight of what they had to prove. When the school board reconvened, the tension was palpable. They listened as Jake and Lily presented their collective efforts, beautiful testimonials from parents, progress reports from students, and evidence of the community's commitment to education. But would it be enough? As the board members deliberated behind closed doors, anxiety hung like an unseen fog. The world outside seemed still, holding its breath alongside the assembled crowd. Finally, the board chair stepped forward, and silence enveloped the space. "We appreciate the dedication shown here today. However, we have concerns." Lily's heart sank. The board members nodded, but one last comment cut through the air like a blade. With that, the crowd erupted into a storm of emotions. Some felt hope, while others succumbed to despair. Jake and Lily exchanged glances, feeling the enormity of the challenge ahead. They had reached a crucial turning point, but the struggle was far from over. And in that moment, standing in the heart of Maplewood, they knew they couldn't turn back. They had ignited something profound. But would it be enough to save the school from closure? It was a battle they had no choice but to face head-on. Because the next chapter was yet to be written, and neither Lily nor Jake was ready to let the story end here. Would they find a way to hold on to their dream and change the fate of their town forever? Only time would tell.